on the other side. Thank you for being present. Thank you for being present. This is today we are here at the program organized by Hindustan Republican Global. Hindustan Republican is a global movement aimed at preservation of the heritage of the Krantikaris and the IN, along with bringing and promoting retired army personnel into public leadership opportunities inclusive of political roles. Historically, Hindustan Republican Association was founded by Krantikari Pandit Ram Prasad Bismil and operationalized by Sri Sachindranath Sanyal at Varanasi. So today, we are here for the talk titled Rash Behari Bose, Linking Revolutions in Two Epochs. Rash Behari Bose bridged two eras in freedom struggle with his capacity for organized revolution. While the first was in India in pre-Gandhian era between 1912 and 1950, the second was in more complex 1940s, overseas in the form of Indian National Army, which he later handed over to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose as we know. Never he has been arrested in his entire life, and this was stuff of a legend. He promoted Indian thought abroad with his Japanese translation of Bhagavad Gita and Tagore's novel Sheshar Kobita. We have with us the guest of today's program, Priyadarshi Dutta ji, who will enlighten us about the great son of Mahabharata. Let me introduce you all to our guest. Priyadarshi ji, Datta ji is an author and independent researcher based in New Delhi. His published book include The Microphone Man, How Orators Created a Modern India. The second being Leap of Faith, Journey of Indian Elections, which was published by Election Commission of India in 2022 and the recent edition came in 2023. India, the third one being India, Mainspring of Democratic Traditions, published Indian Council of Cultural Relations and SGT University in 2023. Mr. Datta writes columns in news portals, First Post and News 18 on various national and international affairs. Between 2001 and 2021, he wrote regularly in the Pioneer on various subjects of national and international interest. Mr. Datta was incidentally born near to Rash Behari Bose's house in Chandanagar, district Hooghly in West Bengal, and curiously enough shares the same birthday. His interest in revolutionaries was first sparked at the age of 4 while watching Jatra, a Bengali form of drama, during Durga Puja in New Delhi. Later on, he came under the influence of his teacher at ARSD College, New Delhi, Dr. Harindra Srivastav, an authority on Veer Savarkar. Mr. Datta is also a great admirer of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and Rash Behari Bose. Welcome, Priyadarshi ji. Namaste. Thank you for coming. Hope we will have a good talk today. Over to you. Kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you listen to me? Yes. So, namaskar everybody, good evening. And today is 23rd of June. It is also happens to be the martyrdom day of Shama Prasad Mukherjee. Today, when I was first invited to this event by Adarsh Anandji, I was in a bit of a moral dilemma. What should I do? For two reasons. First is that, on the positive side, when he told me to speak on Rash Behari Bose, I could not directly say no because, after all, I was born at a place in Chandanagar and very near to almost a stone's throw away distance from Rash Behari Bose's house in Chandanagar, which I think the municipality of that small town 50 kilometers away from Calcutta has now taken an effort to preserve. Also, I being from Bengal, I have access to some Bengali works of Rash Behari Bose, and also that is written to him that is not accessible to everybody. But I told him that there are more capable people like Proshunre, etc., who has written a book only last year. It is called Rash Behari Bose, a samurai in Japan. So, although being born near Rash Behari Bose's house, and living in Delhi, where Rash Behari Bose first came to the limelight by making an attack through his accomplices on Hardenji. I do not have any other claim to fame in Rash Behari Bose's study. On the other hand, all my books, which others mentioned, they have been on mostly on constitutional things. So, and Rash Behari Bose was a revolutionary, was a thoroughbred revolutionary. So, should I be the right person to speak to him? But then I said, no, if a call comes, then it is being from a very younger times. I have been an admirer of the revolutionaries, and I am at heart a revolutionary. So I should not decline this offer, though I may not be the best person to speak here. Anyway, but still I feel that it is not a research dissertation. This is a 20 or it is a half an hour talk. I believe, and there will be question answers. So I shall be able to manage it. But the most of the things I shall try, rather than on giving too much information on Rash Behari Bose, which I shall give to the extent possible. Try to find out his role, try to reassess his role in the making of the Indian freedom movement and his legacy today. This is what actually I intend to do today. So first of all, I think in Rash Behari, whenever we speak to Rash Behari Bose was born on 25th of May 1886. He was not born in Chandarnagar. He was born at a place some another 50 kilometers away in a village called Shuboldaho in Bardman. And later on, Chandarnagar, as you know, was a French territory then. Now, you might ask, only a few days ago, I had to write an article on the disturbances in New Caledonia, which is a territory of France, overseas territory of France in the Pacific. Therein, I had just mentioned on Rash Behari, having little hint that I have to speak on him. So I said that Rash Behari, although he was a uh, although French imperialism was next only to British imperialism in the 1920s and 30s, French Empire all over the world in extent and territory and in population was next only to British Empire. And it had a small toehold called Chandarnagar, as much as Pondicherry, Karaikale and Mahe, etc. in India. But Rash Behari Bose was the most famous citizen of Chandarnagar, but I have never found him saying something on French imperialism, which was only next to British imperialism in the world. But anyway, that was it. I did not know that I had to deliver a lecture today on Rash Behari Bose. Chandarnagar, as you know, is only 40 or 50 kilometers away from Calcutta, which was at once, at least in Rash Behari Bose's time, was the capital of India, and the entire India from Peshawar to Burma at that time was ruled from Calcutta. And presence of Chandarnagar, which was a very small place of, how the French were able to save that territory, you may wonder. Actually, it so happened that today is 23rd of June in 1757. That is the day when the Battle of Plassey took place and the British ascendancy in Bengal took place. So just 3 months before Plassey, the British, unsure of if there was a attack on the northern India from Ahmed Shah Abdali, and there was a fear that Ahmed Shah Abdali may reach Bengal, which was a completely baseless thought. But British had actually eliminated the French from the Chandarnagar by sending in their 5 ships on 23rd of March 1757. But how did this territory revert to the French? This is actually because after the 7-year war, which took place between England and France in the late 18th century, when they came to the treaty, they actually mutually decided to hand over each other's their overseas treaty. So that is the reason the huge British Empire, French could maintain some toeholds, and especially near to their capital in Kolkata, the French had Chandernagore, which is a small territory. And in Rash Behari Bose's time, when Rash Behari Bose was born, French were not in the good terms with the British. Of course, after 1904, the French and the British entered into an etat cordial, which I exactly do not know whose handiwork it is, but at least the famous numerologist Kiro had claimed that he was actually the main architect of that etat cordial. Of all people, the numerologist, famous numerologist Kiro, he said he went to Paris and he did all the work. So by the time Rash Behari Bose's active life started, French were again, after their history of 100 years war, the 1,000-year war enmity, they were again friends with the British, and this and this friendship was going to stay for many years, after, even after the Second World War and other things. But anyway, till Chandernagore provided a kind of Chandanagar provided actually a kind of a slight of a sanctuary and shelter that where the British could not operate at will. So many of the revolutionaries, whether it is Kanailal Dotto or another great person whom I am going to speak about, you may remember that when Sri Aurobindo went away in 1910, when Sri Aurobindo, after he was released from the jail and fearing that he would be arrested for a second time, and from an inner call of the divine, he went away to Pondicherry. He was actually staying in Chandernagore in hiding in the house of a famous revolutionary, come a very spiritual person whose name is Motilal Ghosh, who started a Pravartak Sangha in Chandernagore, and that Pravartak Sangha used to publish a magazine called Pravartak. And it is quite interestingly that in the same house where Sri Aurobindo was living in 1910, a great changeover came over Rash Behari Bose. Rash Behari, as you know, was born in 1886, and that he was drawn towards revolutionary activities and nationalism after the anti-partition movement started in Bengal after 1905. At 1905, he might have been at around 20 years or so. Rash Behari Bose, according to Rash Behari Bose's own saying, which Rash Behari Bose was drawn towards revolutionary activities in 15, at the age of 15, and then he was going away to join in the army of Baroda, which was a princely state in India ruled by Sayaji Rai Gaikwad III. Then one of his neighbors just detected him and said that, "Are you not the son of Mr. Binod Bihari Bose?" So he was not in a habit of telling a lie. He said yes, and he caught him and brought back to his father. And that is, it is said, the only time Rash Behari Bose was ever caught. Never in his life for a single day he was arrested. Although he was tried to be arrested in India when he was highly active. Even in Japan, when he was staying there from 1915, the British first tried to exert pressure on the Japanese Foreign Ministry to deport Rash Behari Bose from Tokyo, from Japan to Hong Kong, where he would be caught easily. But even in Japan, fate was with him, and he was never for a single day he was caught by authorities anywhere in his entire lifetime. So that is indeed something very remarkable about him. But what I'm going to say, at around 19 hello at around 1910, after Sri Aurobindo had just left under, of course, an assumed identity, he had left from Chandernagore. They came to Ganga, and the Ganga, Aurobindo had to go through Calcutta. Although he was hiding in Chandernagore, you can't reach directly from there. There is no access to the sea. You have to come to actually Calcutta, and from Khidirpur there on to go to Pondicherry. So Aurobindo risked his own freedom for the second time at that time, but he was staying in hiding at a house of Motilal Ray. who was the founder of this Pravartak Sangho. Although he was beginning as a revolutionary, he later gravitated towards spirituality. He was a householder. He had a wife also who they were both drawn towards and for spirituality. And today also there is a fair that is held in Chandanagar called the Khunti Mela. I do not know why it is said. Khunti is an instrument with which you do cooking in Bengali. That is called a Khunti is there, and the Pravartak Sangho is still there. Now, after Sri Aurobindo, in the room Sri Aurobindo was living in hiding in Chandanagar, it being a French territory. After few months after Sri Aurobindo had left and reached Pondicherry safely, Rash Behari Bose and one of his childhood friend, who was actually a disciple of Mr. Motilal Ray, his name is Srish Ghosh, they came there, and he and Motilal Ghosh was speaking to about him to Sri Aurobindo, about Sri Aurobindo, and he said that Sri Aurobindo feels that one should have to act like an instrument of God. One had to dedicate oneself completely towards the longing of the soul. And what Sri Aurobindo did for the country was also a kind of a spiritual action. Now, he did not notice that Rash Behari Bose was listening to everything there, because it was Rash Behari Bose's own town and he could Chandanagar. Rash Behari Bose suddenly spoke out and yes says, you have to be an instrument of God, you have to be an instrument of God. Then he put his hands like this and put on his head. He said, you have to hold your head like this and and go and advance. I do not know what is the action of meaning to this, but when I today I tried to put like this, I felt some spiritually tingling sensation. Maybe it is some kind of some posture of yoga, I do not know. But if you try, you can experiment like this, you would feel some, some spiritual vibration, and your mind would at once become at peace. So Rash Behari Bose did like this. And then Rash Behari Bose, from there, Rash Behari Bose was at that time working in the Indian, I think, forest department in Dehradun. And he had an inclination towards the revolution and spirit movement, but he was just a clerk. But I have heard that, he was teaching Hindi to a British officer, and he was also in that using that as a cover. He was also getting a lot of information what the British were doing, the secret information, whatever he could get. But being based in northern India, he learned good Hindi. He also mastered several other languages from the time. And as you can see, when he went to Japan, he learned Japan to the extent he could write Japanese and translate Indian books from Bengali there. But anyway, Rash Behari Bose's next action, which actually made headlines, was throwing bomb on Lord Hardinge, who was the Governor General of India after the capital was shifted to Delhi. Now, in Delhi, where I live, actually, I've lived from childhood in Delhi. There were also, Delhi was not known for a great political activity, unlike Bombay or Calcutta or even Madras in the colonial India. Only 1.5 session of Congress ever, and a special session took place in Delhi. That's all. Delhi had no great what you call a political activity, and the first person to start political activity in Delhi was actually Swami Shraddhananda, who started a paper called Vijay. But that was in 1920s. I'm telling in 1912, when Rash Behari Bose brought some people, and he wanted to, the British had shifted the capital to Delhi, and he wanted to show that British were actually not safe there. He brought Bashanta Kumar Vishwas, and there were also revolutionaries of Delhi like Master Amir Chand, Abodh Bihari, Bhai Balmukund. Now, Bhai Balmukund was actually Bhai Balmukund was actually a companion of Rash Behari Bose in Delhi. Was actually from the family of Bhai Satidas and Matidas, who gave martyrdom in 1675, I believe, in the Shishganj Gurdwara, along with the ninth Sikh Guru Tegh Bahadur. And from their family also produced the Bhai Parmanand of the Hindu Mahasabha, who was also at one times associated with Rash Behari Bose to some extent, as I know, and Bhai Mahavir, who was the governor of Madhya Pradesh, was from their family. So Amir Chand Balmukund Bhai and Amir Chand, Master Amir Chand, who was a teacher, Bhai Balmukund, Abodh Bihari, and Rash Behari Bose brought Basant Kumar Bishwas. They threw the bomb. Now Hardinger did not die. He suffered some kind of a injury. He was riding on the back of an elephant, but he suffered an injury. He was in a hospital. Rash Behari Bose, who had distinguished himself as a master, because I said that he was never arrested. Why was that? Because he was a master. He was a great escape artist, I would say. He was a master of using disguises or incognito. He even went to that hospital to find out what has actually happened, as if he was a great uh, a person, great sympathizer of the Governor General. He went to the hospital to find out whether he's actually died or not. Unfortunately, he did not die. So in 1912, this happened. I think that building for a long time, I do not know what happened. That was a building of Punjab National Bank. Even in the 1950s or 60s, I believe I have come across discussions in the Lok Sabha on preserving that building. Professor Shamar Guha, who was a person who was a great professor of chemistry, but spent his life finding out what happened to Subhash Chandra Bose. He had raised this suggestion in the parliament, I think in the 70s or somewhere, that that building should be preserved. I do not know what happened from that PNB building. I'm not sure what really happened to that building. But Rash Behari Bose vanished from there, and the four other revolutionaries were unfortunately caught and hanged. Though nobody was caught at that particular time. Rash Behari Bose went away to Lahore. He made Lahore the center of his all his activities, revolutionary activities. From Maharashtra, he brought Vishnu Ganesh Pingle, who was there earlier, had gone to study engineering in America, and he was associated with the Gadarites. Rash Behari Bose also maintained good contacts with the Gadar people, and there was, to cut the long story short, they had actually planned a rebellion on the lines of 1857, which uses that the Indian personnel in the British Army would all rise up in rebellion, in revolt on 21st of February 1915. It would start in Lahore cantonment, and then the revolutionaries would stop the frontier mail. I think that is called that frontier mail uh, coming from Peshawar, and that would be a sign in rest of India that if that train has not come, it means that revolution has begun. And that revolution was planned until that revolt or mutiny was planned until the Singapore cantonment also, although there was some disturbance in Singapore cantonment due to some kind of betrayal by an insider, that revolution did not take place. And Rash Behari Bose had four hideout places in Lahore. All that was ransacked, all that was run over by the police, and the police raided and tried to arrest, but Rash Behari Bose was no longer there. Rash Behari Bose has described it in his own biography, which is called Rash Behari's Atmakatha, which is available in Bengali, and which was earlier written for that Prabortok magazine in 1924 from Japan. He sent those installments. So Rash Behari Bose has said that he was actually disguised as a Sikh and sitting at Lahore railway station. And one of the things he said, of course, I don't think we can make use of it now. He said, whenever you know that police people are the police informers are going around you, Rash Behari could see them. But he said, don't give attention towards them at all. If you give attention towards them, they will become, suspicious. He was sitting with a huge pagdi or a turban on his head, and he was singing as if no.
Dattaji, you got muted.
You are on mute.
Detected. And from Lahore he came. Lahore he also came away. He reached thereupon. He had reached a place called Kelong. Kelong is a place where now this I have not gone towards that. Many people might have visited Himachal Pradesh, that Atal Setu and all the Rohtang Pass, etc.
You're on mute.
Be covered with snow. Hello?
Now you're
Hello,
on.
can you listen to me?
You're
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah. That place used to be covered with snow for I think more than 6 months or 8 months. Out. Rash Behari Bose reached there and he was living in a village of Kelong. Now the municipality of Kelong had installed a bust of Rash Behari Bose in that small town, which is in Himachal Pradesh, western part of, I think the western part of Himachal Pradesh. So that is really remarkable that how he reached there, how he stayed there. Many of the things were not clear to him. Rash Behari Bose has not written in much great details of all the facts because whatever it is, but he came to Chandernagore and he was also in touch with another revolutionary from Rajasthan. His name was Pratap Singh Barot, who was later on died in jail. Similarly, from Benares, he originated. There was Nagendranath Dotto. He was known as Girija Babu. Rash Behari Bose mistakenly says it's his actual name is Nagendranath Chaudhary, but his name was Nagendranath Dotto. He was originally from East Bengal, but he as a revolutionary set up his base in Varanasi at that time. Now, in 1915, so Sachindranath Sanyal, which is, as you say, that he was one of the founders of Hindustan Republican Association. Sachindranath Sanyal was a right-hand man of Rash Behari Bose, and Sachindranath Sanyal also wrote his book, The Bandi Jiban, which I have found only in Hindi. I have read some portion of that book. And Rash Bihari's, they all said that you should go away from India because police is after you. Now, if you are arrested, we won't be able to regenerate this entire organization. If we are arrested and if we are hanged, you have the capacity to build up the organization again from the grassroots, but we don't have, and your life is very precious. Rash Behari Bose was initially not ready because he had his father, his stepmother, his brothers, etc. were there. Although he was a revolutionary, but to going away from India, I mean, he had all that he had earlier gone is to Burma. He has never gone outside India, although he has moved away to different states due to his activities. He was not ready, but later on they also, and then, but how would he go? His name is plastered all over India. Rash Behari Bose, police is on his toes. So he assumed a name that assumed it is the name is called P.N. Tagore. And he said Rabindranath Tagore was going to Japan at that time in 1915. Rash Behari Bose said, Rash Behari Bose told there on reaching that office, he is identified that this P.N. Tagore is an assumed name. I mean, P.N. Tagore is actually a relative of Mr. Tagore, who is going to Japan and he is going to see there, and he would also study in Japan later on. So he could manage to get out from India by a ship called Sanuki Maru. Sanu is a place, Sanuki is a place in, and Maru is like steamship. No? It is like Sanuki Maru. It came out from Calcutta's, that Khidirpur dock, and it is there from there because Calcutta is an inland port. It is not on the sea, so the river come like Tiber, like Rome or London. It is an inland port. So Rash Behari Bose from there, and he said his name is P.N. Tagore, is going to study there. Now, after Rash Behari Bose had left, I mean, I'm just describing what happened on the way, but after Rash Behari Bose left, then British came to know how Rabindranath Tagore is going there as a guest of a royal guest of Japan. Why should somebody else go to find out where Rabindranath going to? He's not going to stay in a hotel. He's going to stay in royal place. But at that time, Rash Behari Bose had already fled India. And on that ship, interestingly, Charles Tregat, who was a very dreaded inspector general, and the British had later sent him to Palestine at that time when Israel came at that time existence. I think that Charles Tregat also came on board because they knew somebody, they may be something, to high ship. And Rash Behari Bose felt that he was very close to being found out and arrested. But somehow Rash Behari Bose, although he had initially got it on a second class of the ship, he exchanged that with the first class ship where food was free, but although it cost him 212 rupees. So interestingly, that the police never came that first class cabins. It was a half passenger, half cargo kind of a ship. And because he had become friends with the captain, and Charles Tregat never came to him. Rash Behari Bose could listen from behind the door that they were Charles Tregat, then the police dogs and etc. all have come. But Rash Behari Bose was in it, and the second time he was also, this time also he was saved. Now, when in the ship, he met some Sikhs. He made some friend with the Sardarjis who was very, kind to him. And one of the Sikhs boasted that, because at that time, every India has come to know that there was a plan of a mutiny in February. And this is, we are speaking in May, 3 months after that. So Rash Behari Bose was the talk of the town. So one of the Sikhs came and he boasted that, I know Rash Behari Bose in Kabul. Rash Behari Bose was just listening to him. He was just in front of that Sardarji, but he was only smiling. I mean, he cannot say that he's Rash Behari Bose. Then he would be divulged and his identity would be divulged and he would be caught. But anyway, he reached there from Hong Kong, and then the ship used to go from Hong Kong, Singapore, and then reach Japan. In Japan also, it is a very long story that when Rash Behari Bose first went there in 1915, after just reaching there, I think in May or June, when Rash Behari Bose reached Japan. In November, Rash Behari Bose, for the first time, Rash Behari Bose arranged a meeting of the non-resident Indians in Japan, and especially of the Greater Asia at that time who were living there, to and he also met a great political leader from China who is known as the maker of modern China, Sun Yat-sen. He became very good friends with Sun Yat-sen, and on one occasion, although I don't have the specific, Sun Yat-sen had saved Rash Behari Bose from sure death. They held the East Asia's first ever non-resident Indian conference on the freedom of India. It was held somewhere in November in 1915 in a kind of a eatery or a hotel, and it was presided over by Lala Lajpat Rai, who had come specially from America. But immediately after this was published in the newspaper, it created a big uproar. Of course, the many Indians felt, many Indians also felt encouraged by that. But Japanese who were under the Japanese foreign ministry, which was under great influence of British, which was the leading power, which was the leading imperial power at that time. I mean, today it would be difficult for us. I mean, today I believe America could have that kind of influence in Japan in post-war II. At that time, it was the British. So British said, you deport Rash Behari Bose and Hirembo Gupta, who was with him. Lala Lajpat Rai just left on his own. The very next day after the meeting and this newspaper came, Lala Lajpat Rai went back to America. Rash Behari Bose, and I mean, where would they would go? I mean, they have come to Japan and all after this, taking all this trouble. I mean, if they go back to India, they would be arrested. And Hirembo Gupta was with him, one of his friends. And so what happened? They actually first Japanese foreign ministry. So when this came in the news, the many intellectuals opposed this stand of the Japanese foreign ministry, saying that they are acting under the influence of the British, and which is unbecoming of Japanese freedom and modern Japan. But anyway, Japanese freedom movement, Japanese foreign ministry was deaf, and it remained completely insensitive to that kind of appeal by the people. Even Rash Behari and Hirembo wrote a letter in the newspaper. It created more people and came to know about their fate. But anyway, so they were given only a few days to leave Japan. Otherwise, they said they would just forcibly board them on a ship going towards Hong Kong. But in Hong Kong was a British colony till 1997. So Hong Kong, they would be arrested in Hong Kong. So, and then Rash Behari Bose had all charges of sedition, murder, etc., all those things against, which were there as a revolutionary, real or unreal. So those trumped up charges, British would try to punish him, and so Rash Behari Bose, what to do at that time? destiny played, the destiny was pleasant on him. And Rash Behari Bose was at that time given support by Mutsuzo Toyama, who was one of the great from the samurai family. But his support was not enough. There was a gentleman and a lady by the name of Ijuko Soma and Koka Soma. They used to run a bread making shop, which was quite a well known joint for baker, well known bakery joint, and uh, the family was quite well to do. They got this news and they could hide Rash Bihari and Hirambo in their in their workshop, which was at that time empty. But this was in a completely this was done completely secretively. And it was interesting that how Rash Behari Bose led there for a few months there. After that, British made a very blunder by attacking a Japanese ship on the high seas and taking out, forcibly arresting 8 Indians who were on board, or 8 or 6 Indian on board. That really changed actually the mood of the Japanese government. And after that, the Japanese government said, nothing to do with the British. Rash Behari Bose. After that, they said that the deportation order on Rash Behari Bose stands annulled, and Rash Behari Bose could at that time come out. But the British ministry, and British was, it is not like today. British were a great imperial force, and the British embassy was there. They were trying to get even Rash Behari Bose secretly murdered, or kind of kidnapped, something like this, what will do. So Rash Behari Bose's, there was threat on Rash Behari Bose's life. This family, this Soma family, Ijuko Soma and Koka Soma, would be surprised to know they later on became the father-in-law and mother-in-law of Rash Behari Bose. They married their daughter. Uh, they married their daughter, you know, uh, to Rash Behari Bose, which was a very revolutionary thing to do in their time, both in Japan and as well as in India, because they hailed from a quite a known family in Japan. Their forefathers have been the samurais, and Rash Behari Bose here also a Bengali Hindu, the Kayastas. They never also marry outside their own, as it is there in India at that time. You can say at that time it was there. So on both sides there was this issue. But after Rash Behari Bose, they married their their daughter. I'm not just able to recall her Japanese name right now. So there's the so so that lady, Mrs. Bose, she became Mrs. Bose, and she was there alive only for 8 years, 1917 to 1925. And she was an exceptionally loyal and devoted lady, and she who bore Rash Behari Bose 2 children. One is that Motsido, and I think another Motsido, and Kukoi, the daughter. Daughter lived on for a long time. The son, Rash Behari Bose's son, because he was a Japanese, he fought in the Second World War and passed away fighting for the Japanese army in 1453. So at that time, Rash Behari is later on, Rash Behari Bose, all over that he remained in Japan. You must know that Subhash Chandra Bose was also later on he went to Japan, and this year he became the leader of the independence movement in the 40s. But Subhash Chandra Bose came from a very well-to-do family. For 20 years, he was in Congress. He was a well-known person, and also from a well-to-do family. Uh, Rash Behari Bose, it was not like this. Rash Behari Bose was outside the Congress circle. He was a revolutionary. He was a revolutionary to begin with. And then he did not come from a family. His father died prematurely. After Rash Behari Bose went to Japan after that, because he was under great debt. The family was quite poor. And even outsmarting all that thing, Rash Behari Bose weathering all that thing. If Rash Behari Bose could shine as a great Asian leader, I'm just going to come to that portion when Rash Behari Bose was the first person to speak of Rash Behari Bose to speak of uh, the freedom for entire Asia. So you have to understand that the background, the socio-economic background Rash Behari Bose came from, and then the achievement which he did was simply remarkable. After 8 years, he got after marrying a Japanese and remaining 8 years in Japan. He of course got the citizenship of Japan. But is in 1924 when Rabindranath Tagore went again for the Japan for the second time to Japan. He actually met Rash Behari Bose, who had forged, who Rabindranath came to know that he was the person he forged the identity as his relative and went away to Japan. He really wanted to meet that person. Rash Behari Bose was also a stuff of the legend, I said, and the people say that in Pother Dabi, Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay's novel, the Sobboshachi character is actually inspired by Rash Behari Bose. So in 1924, Rabindranath met his family. There is a picture of Rash Behari Bose's entire family with Rabindranath Tagore. His sons and daughter was quite young at that time. There was also, I think, the picture with his father-in-law, mother-in-law. At that time when Rabindranath and then Rabindranath, after meeting Rabindranath, Rash Behari Bose first time felt that no, he could write some, he would concentrate more on Bengali. That is the time Rash Behari Bose in 1914 first started writing in installment his biography, Rash Behari Nakojivoni, for Pravartak. He used to send them to the office there by post to Chandranagar, and that used to be published. Now those writings were almost going to be lost, and they were this become a victim to the termite, I would say. But then one person called Amol Kumar Mitro, he could save all that, going through the old versions of that Pravartak magazine. He found it out, and he was the first person to publish Rash Behari Nakojivoni along with some of the other letters that Rash Behari Bose had written. In 1913, in 1923, he started Rash Behari Bose started also writing in Bengali at that time. Of course, the new Bengali, being a Bengali himself. Then, second time, I think, Rash Behari started a magazine called New Asia that used to be published from Japan, New Asia from Tokyo. Now, here at that time in the Legislative Assembly, I have come across this discussion. One Mr. I think his name was Daya Prasad Singh or somebody, he raised this issue. Gaya Prasad Singh, he raised this issue that whether government has decided to proscribe the New Asia magazine and why it is so. So at that time, Harry Graham Hague, who was the equivalent of Home Minister, being the secretary, became the member home in the Viceroy's Executive Council. So he said, no, the Rash Behari Bose is a proclaimed absconding offender. There are charges of murder and sedition against him. But then other members asked, is that the reason, without going through the content of that magazine, you have proscribed it simply because the person himself happened to be a person running away from law? Should anything written by him should also be proscribed? So Hague said, no, we have gone through the content of that magazine and we have decided to proscribe it based on that content. Anyway, so it shows at least people in India, not just revolutionaries, but other people in India had not forgotten Rash Behari in 1923, nor Rash Behari Bose was sitting idle in Japan. Although he did not have money, he could send only 1,000 yen one, and some household articles, etc., for his home, some clothes, etc. But never in his life he could send any money to home again in Japan, and he was short of money also at that time. Although his father-in-law and mother-in-law were quite prosperous at that time. But Rash Behari Bose himself would not like to take money from anyone. And in one of the places, he said that give in the life, when you give away, that is much more better than taking something. We come to this world without anything, and all that you gain in this world is actually it is a kind of it is also a kind of an average. So give away. By giving away, you can really reach the spiritual the spiritual state. But anyway, this happened, and so and Rash Behari was also known in India. I've also heard that Rash Behari Bose has started a Hindu Mahasabha in Tokyo. And another letter I have come across of Rash Behari, of course, this letter never reached the hand of its that's intended addressee, namely Subhash Chandra Bose. But I have come across this is one of the collected works of Subhash Chandra Bose uh, published by this Bose Research Institute, Netaji Research Institute in Calcutta. I think which is run by Sugato Bose now. His father used to run it, Shishir Bose. I think seventh volume, I have come across a letter, interesting letter that Rash Behari Bose wrote from Japan to London when Subhash Chandra Bose, after becoming declared the president of the Haripura Congress 1938, had briefly gone to London. Previously in 33 and 36, he was visited continental Europe for his own treatment, but not to England. But when he went to England after in around 37 and 38, that letter of Rash Behari never reached it. But I have read that letter being published there. It says that uh, Congress should actually agitate for more control on the armed forces. At present, the Indian armed forces are not under the control of the Congress. It is a completely colonial force. And not only that, Nirod Singh Chaudhary on the 50th year of Congress in 1935 has written a monograph in which it has showed that how the Indian army was not actually a national army. It was actually it is actually a mercenary, a kind of a mercenary army. And in that sense, Rash Behari and later on Subhash Chandra Bose were the responsible for creating the first, not only national but nationalistic army of India. The second thing that Rash Behari Bose wrote to Subhash Chandra Bose, that we should try for the Hindu unity, because Hindus being the majority in India and they are under also threat also under some parts. So unless the Hindus are strong, they cannot hold the India together. And unless the Hindus are strong, there is no hope for India. That is what Rash Behari Bose had stated. Rash Behari, in that sense, you see, he was an old style revolutionary who valued their Hindu heritage. He was not later on being in Japan, etc. All those, I mean, he never came to the communist fold as many revolutionaries later on became, including of Hindustan Republican Association, those Bhagat Singh and others, those who have moved towards the leftist thought. And the leftist thought was India was first time brought into, as you know, the one of the founders of Communist Party of India in exile in Uzbekistan, I believe, M.N. Roy. M.N. Roy was also a revolutionary. He came from a family of the Pandit and the Purohit family of the priest. But later on, he became a a communist. Though he was also later on, he was actually purged out of the Communist Party, and he came to this Renaissance association which started in Dehradun. But one of the person, this Sachindranath Sanyal, M.N. Roy had sent a person to convert Sachindranath Sanyal to communism. Sachindranath Sanyal says in his Bandi Jivan he never did. First, he said that communism might have many good qualities, like they spoke of equality, they speak of raising the standard of the poor. But I feel that, not believing in the God, atheism, or a materialistic interpretation of history, all that he says is all sheer bunkum. And it is all made up, without which also communism could act as a force. but all these things have actually been imposed which have no relevance, especially for India. But Rash Behari Bose remained a revolutionary of the old school in that sense. And he was in touch with Veer Savarkar because Subhash Chandra Bose, after he was expelled from the Congress, and later on he founded Forward Bloc as an independent political party. uh, Subhas Bose, who was otherwise quote unquote very secular, at that time he went to meet the Sarsang Chalak, at that time Dr. Hedgewarji, but Hedgewarji at that time was in a state of unconsciousness or coma. Subhash Chandra Bose waited upon him, and after when he left, he once came to his sense, and on that day he died. Then Subhash Chandra Bose also went to Savarkar. Savarkar said he is in touch with Rash Behari Bose, and Subhash Chandra Bose, instead of using his uh, energies here in Holwell Memorial removal, all those things, he should actually go away from India. So Subhash Chandra Bose had started his preparation of leaving India in somewhere in the 1940 itself, but then came that incarceration, and then he could not go. Then that is a long story how he left in 1941. But Rash Behari Bose used to send some letters, which I am told is there in the Hindu Mahasabha Bhavan of Bombay. I have not seen myself. Through the by means of the Buddhist monks who used to come from Japan on pilgrimage to India, and Rash Behari Bose and Savarkar was in touch with Rash Behari Bose at that time. And Rash Behari Bose has some of the own writings I have stated. I have also shared it with others. That in his own writing, Rash Behari Bose has written Om and others that truth is God. In Bangla also say Shottoi Bhagavan. Then somewhere in the 1930s, all these things were going on in India. Gandhiji came, and after the revolutionaries, actually this mass agitation started. In the time of Rash Behari Bose, revolutionary activities were also, they were secretive things which had just started after the Bengal the movement. And when the Adarsh was other day speaking to me that we have not given adequate recognition to the revolutionaries, and HRA wants to do it, but I said yes, it may be true that Congress have denied them, but we are not completely to blame there, because the revolutionaries themselves led a secretive life. Only time people first came to know about them when they were either arrested, or they were sentenced, or they were hanged. That is the time people came to know about him. So many of the revolutionaries got lost from the mainstream because they could not connect with the political stream of India after the elections on limited franchisee basis was started by the British after the Government of India Act 1919. And also when Gandhiji's mass agitation came, revolutionaries might have, but revolutionaries no longer remained that important or that strong as they were. Although there was many attempts like HRA itself at that time to regroup, but they could never capture the mass imagination to that extent. And many of them who tried to enter politics later on lost elections, and they were severely forgotten. But anyway, Rash Behari Bose, in that sense, is remembered not only in India but in Japan. But he is the most revered Indian I have heard after Gautam Buddha in Japan. And Rash Behari Bose, interestingly, Rash Behari Bose's wife was dead by 1925. His his mother-in-law was living. His mother-in-law helped Rash Behari Bose found the Indian Independence League, and also had the moral support, though at that time she was, I think, 70 plus. When Rash Behari Bose first, in collaboration with Mohan Singh, founded the Indian National Army, which later on came to be known under Subhash Chandra Bose's Azad Hind Fauj. Now, what actually happened? That when the Japanese attacked in far away, some 5,000 kilometers away, the Pearl Harbor, on the very attack in the Pearl Harbor was actually meant to paralyze the American ships and the American Air Force from coming to Japan, which had its own plans for the imperialistic plan, of course, and expansionist plan in Southeast Asia. and South Asia. So at that time, what happened? America entered the Second World War in that is in 1941. So within 24 hours of the attack on Japanese Pearl Harbor, Japan also attacked various of the countries of South Asia like Singapore, like Siam, that is Thailand, Burma, etc. And these countries gradually fell, again. So Rash Behari Bose stated that Rash Behari Bose had said uh, after this attack on Pearl Harbor on Japan, it happened, I think, I don't remember the date, maybe in December 1941. And this Burma fell on 7th of March 1942. Singapore later on that Singapore also around that time. So when Singapore fell, Rash Behari Bose wrote it to the Japanese ministry that all the Indians who are living in the Southeast Asia, and at that time there was no mention of Southeast Asia. It was called Greater East Asia, and Japan has a design called Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. Uh, so at that time, the Indians living there, he could convince the Japanese are not against the Japanese. The Indians living there should not be treated as like others there, or even the British officers there. The Indians want to see freedom from the for British rule, so Japanese should treat Indians as friends. So it is on the Rash Behari Bose's insistence at that time, that Hikari Kikan was founded uh, there to have a interface with the Indians. But of course, in the Hikari Kikan, there was a change of officer. Later on, it was not as uh, Yamamoto came later on, but it was not as effective as it initially thought to be. And initially, after the Rash Behari Bose could help the Indians to regroup, and there was a team which was going on from Southeast Asia with Mr. Goho and all other people. They met a plane crash in 1942 near Tokyo. That is, I think, as far as I know, it was a mysterious, and how it happened. It is a mysterious plane crash. And the Subhash Chandra Bose was in Germany. The British stated that Subhash Chandra Bose had died in that attack, whether Subhash Chandra Bose was safe on the other part of the world. So Subhash Chandra Bose denied that in his next speech over the radio. Rash Behari Bose at that time also distinguished himself by being the first Indian to use shortwave radio and to make addresses towards Indian in India. I do not know how far these speeches were heard by the Indians at that time, but Subhash Chandra Bose, who was making similar addresses from Germany, which was to be transmitted from a center of the Philips recording studio in occupied territory of Netherlands. It used to be heard in India. Even Sanawaz Khan, General Sanawaz Khan had said he could hear in his radio Subhash Chandra Bose's speech from Germany in as far as Singapore. Because you see, in the late 1930s, and I have spoken this aspect in my book, uh, The Microphone Men, How Orators Created a Modern India, that shortwave radio was a new thing in late 1930s, and Rash Behari Bose and Subhash Chandra Bose independently were the first to use that for the cause of the India's independence. So Rash Behari Bose is, of course, he founded the Indian National Army from the prisoners of war. He made a propaganda with them that those who would join, those who were sworn to fight for the empire and the king, those who would dissolve that and come over to the Japanese, they would be called a free person, and they would fight for independence of India. So the initial, you see the initial core or the kernel of the Indian National Army was built by Rash Behari Bose and Captain Mohan Singh of the 14th Regiment, of the Punjab Regiment. So they're there. But Rash Behari Bose, I do not know, he has often been referred to as the veteran or the old revolutionary. Rash Behari Bose lived only for 59 years and 55 in today is no, I mean, 50s is the new 30s or the new 40s. I do not know. At that time, he was always referred to the writings as the veteran revolutionary or the old revolutionary, aged revolutionary. All that he lived was for 59 years, and he was. But then Rash Behari Bose was based in Japan, and the people had a kind of a suspicion that he was acting as a Japanese, acting as a Japanese agent. And but Rash Behari Bose, given his intense love for India, could never do that. In one of the conferences, Rash Behari Bose was hooted by the new armies and the new personnel who has joined Indian National Army. So, in that movement was actually collapsing. By the 1942, it was collapsing. It was Rash Behari Bose's brainchild. It is said he had come to know that Subhash Chandra Bose was in Germany, and it is claimed, of course, some other people also claim that honor, but it is said that Rash Behari Bose was the person who talked with the Japanese, because he was based in Tokyo. He spoke with the Japanese foreign ministry, and the Subhash Chandra Bose was brought to Japan by that 88 days submarine journey plus 6 or 7 days of flight from this Sumatra to Tokyo. This was a collaboration by the wartime at the Japanese government and the German government, the Nazi government. It was a very secretive plan and a very daring plan. And if Subhash Chandra Bose was at the other end, at this end was Rash Behari, he was the person who could convince the Japanese. And once the Japanese were convinced, actually the German got convinced that they were about to. That was a Subhash Bose left in a U-boat, and after many long years at the near the Madagascar island in Indian Ocean near African coast, a kind of a switch over from one transit from one submarine to the Japanese submarine, Germany submarine to Japanese submarine took place. That is the only kind of a human transference during the entire World War on the high seas from one submarine to the other. Subhash Chandra Bose, when he reached there, Rash Behari Bose finally gave him the command to the Indian National Army, to Subhash Chandra Bose. This was done on 4th of July, 1943 at Cathay Pacific Hall, which I am told no longer exists in Singapore, at a huge meeting of the overseas Indians there. And after a few days, Subhash Chandra Bose also took over the first he took over the charge of Indian Independence League. That picture of that moment, even a video of that moment is available. You can find out on the YouTube. So Rash Behari Bose actually passed on that baton of that rebellion to Subhash Bose, who was a much more able and much more in an age, in a right age to prosecute that movement. And then after Indian National Army also came in the hand of Subhash Bose. And then Rash Behari Bose somewhere, fades into the background. And this is a phase about which I know a bit less, because on 21st of January 1945, when Rash Behari Bose passed away, the war was still going on. And Japan had not surrendered, although they had suffered many reverses. So his death was reported at the locally, but I do not know. Immediately on that day, I have not seen any statement from Subhash Chandra Bose. I have not come across it. So, but researchers say that there was something done locally. But that's Rash Behari Bose life ended not in complete success or this realization of his dream. Last 30 years of his life was spent in Japan. And all that Rash Behari Bose wanted towards the end of life was to come to India in a free India. Had he just lived on a few long years, a few more years, which was within the reach of any person. I mean, he died only at the age of 59. And his mother-in-law, Mrs. Koka Soma, was the first person to write his biography in any language. I mean, apart from what Rash Behari Bose himself wrote. She wrote it in Japanese. And can you remember that lady? Can you just imagine that lady? She was at that time, Rash Behari, she has lost her daughter. She lost her son-in-law. She lost even her grandchild, who died fighting for the Japanese. So salute to that lady, Mrs. Koka Soma. who not only in his lifetime, not only in her lifetime, gave all support to Rash Behari Bose, but also wrote that first biography in Japanese of Soma. And from that, there was a Dr. Ashwar, I think that name, if I'm not mispronouncing. He came to know about it. He wrote about Rash Behari. And when Dr. Ashwar came to India, he located the stepbrother of Rash Behari Bose, whose name was uh, Bijon Bihari Bosu. And Bijon Bihari Bose said that he had spent all his life outside Bengal. He had been a teacher, but after 30 years, I mean, he went to teaching profession to make the life to make students into a better human being. But he cannot say for sure whether he had done it for even could do it even for a one person. So, but then Dr. Ashwar, who was from Japan, he actually encouraged uh, Rash Behari Bose's stepbrother, Bijon Bihari, to write his biography. And then he came out with a biography which could not find a publisher in Bengal. That was published by a lady in Gomo. At that time, it was a part of Bihar called Manbhum. Today, now I think it's a part of West Bengal. So in Gomo station also where Subhash Chandra Bose left in his disguise to there. So that says, but after that, Rash Behari's own writings were published, and something of Rash Behari Bose's people, at least in Chandanagar, remember him. But he was a much greater man. I think I am happy today that Adarsh spoke about to speak on something or whatever I could, little I could know about Rash Behari Bose. That a revolutionary spent all his life away from India in Japan, and he became there a great person and the most revered person from India after Gautam Buddha in Japan. But the time period of Rash Behari and Subhash Chandra Bose was an abnormal time period. They had thought that they would succeed. Rash Behari Bose was almost fading away from public memory. Towards the end of his life, Rash Behari Bose again he resurfaced and created a great organization, the Indian National Army, which was really, I would call, in a very miraculous manner, he did it, which speaks of great foresight and courage to do it. And that was because he had an entire preparation of his lifetime. But he could, although he could not succeed to do, Rash Behari Bose still feels that whatever he did actually contributed to the India's freedom. That is important, that to say. So who lives or who dies was not actually very important for the revolutionaries. And Rash Behari Bose at one place says of the Lahore conspiracy in the 1915 that he speaks that all the revolutionaries, he writes this in Bengali, that even today, meaning that even today, when I remember the people like Vishnu Ganesh Pingle, as I remember, Nidhan Singh, Kartar Singh Sarabha, and all others, I almost started experiencing pain and I started crying. So those who are not revolutionaries will never understand what kind of bondings the revolutionaries amongst themselves. They love their comrades even more than they love their own parents, own brothers or sisters. So that is a kind of a bondage which Rash Behari Bose spoke about. And in all his life, he was, last but not the least, I'm going to speak about the 16 books that he wrote in Japanese. Unfortunately, all 16 books had not been recovered. Some of his books that is translated was Bhagavad Gita to Japanese, another is Ramayana. And towards the end, very interesting to note that the very eventful, very important years of 1942 and 43, when the Japanese war had started with the Anglo-American bloc in the Pacific. Rash Behari Bose's books on Ramayana and Sheshar Kobita, Rabindranath Tagore's novel, actually, it is not, it's a novel actually, came out in 1942 and 43. And initially, Rash Behari Bose was not a person without humor. He had also written a book on Indian humor in Japanese, but that was in the 1920s. So all that book he has written about, but I still feel that all his works, I'm not sure whether has been collected or not. They remain in place, and even sometimes, what to speak of Rash Behari, even Subhash Chandra Bose's collected works, what we say, Chandrachud Ghosh said sometimes ago that it is hardly a fraction of what Subhash Chandra Bose had written or spoken during his entire lifetime. And the Indian government should come forward as it did in the case of Gandhi's collected works and Subhash Chandra Bose's collected works. So I believe also Rash Behari Bose, and today we are speaking of East, our good relationship which we have Japan, or the, of course, Japan don't want to look back to that Tojo's time. That Tojo, was a prime minister at that time who was hanged. Japan don't want to look back to that Second World War era. But at least we could use our good offices and collect more materials and enshrine his memory both in India and here. Here I do not know except for Kelong. There are two busts which I have come across Rash Behari. One is in front of Chandanagar College, another is very near to Rash Behari Bose's home outside the lane. It was uh, it was actually uh, inaugurated by a revolutionary, I think, called Vinod Bihari Chaudhary, who was one of the revolutionaries of Chittagong armor, uh, Chittagong armory case. He was a centenarian and lived long. So that bust is there. But I feel that even in Delhi, where Rash Behari Bose, we can't speak of Lahore, but when in Delhi Rash Behari Bose did this, we should have something to honor him. I have not come across as yet. So I think with this thing, I think it just got a rather long. So I think I should end my speech here. Uh, Whatever I know, I could say. Of course, there are far greater things.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Priyadarshi. So thank you for enlightening us. Now it's the turn of the audience. So I will request our audience to ask questions if they have any.
I
You
am
can type your questions.
well. I do have a question, Onimitra.
So you can type your question in the chat box. So I can ask these questions on behalf of you, or you can directly ask to Priyadarshi ji by turning your videos on. So just a minute, Nimitra ji. So so I can see Animitra ji and Mahindra ji raising his hand. So Animitra ji, please carry on.
Priyadarshi, thank you very much for this wonderful lecture. Thank you very much. But my question is here. I would like to know details from you that of the Hindu-German conspiracy case. I'm just going through the revolution documents at this moment to collect more facts and figures. The Hindu-German conspiracy case that was dealt by Rash Behari Bose at his prime youth happens to be one of the most brilliant aspects of the Indian freedom struggle, but has not been unexplored till now. But now, when I was also going in search of the facts or the realities, I have come across a book called Biplava Shandhana by Narayan Banerjee in Research of Revolution. The book was published in 1960. I do have the PDF copy till now before me. There it is said extensively that a Hindu-German conspiracy case can be regarded as one of the most dangerous plans to oust, to effect the British rule in Indian history. And according to the book, it has been said that an extensive preparation was made by the German government and the revolutions of Bengal and other parts of India to form a revolutionary war council, where it was destined that the German military officers would come as far as Sundarban or to Orissa to impart military training with lots of arms and ammunition. And there was also the news of the Maverick that was coming with 2 lakhs of revolvers, 1 lakh of rifles, and lots of cartridges and everything. So I would like you to concentrate on this issue, please, is on this subject, please.
Well, Onimitro, can you listen to me?
Yes, sir.
Onimitro, I'm sure you know much about it. I do. I am not an expert on the subject. I said one of the persons have written about the conspiracy was this governor of Punjab, who was later on killed by Udham Singh, General Dyer, the Reginald Dyer. Not Reginald Dyer. I think it's O'Dyer. I think there was a similar kind of name.
Michael O'Dyer. Michael O'Dyer
has written his biography. So in that he has dealt with. You have heard about the Silken Letter conspiracy case. So he had said in 1950 he has differentiated this kind of movements that took place in Punjab under his Michael O'Dyer. In his biography, he has dealt over this. Now, as far as if you want my frank opinion, you see, this is all very interesting to read through. But I feel, this kind of some money, some machines, some men cannot change the destiny of the nation. We had worked something on that. Revolutionaries worked on that German conspiracy plan, but you see, Germany was far away, and Britain was in a complete master of the seas. They could send some this underwater boat that is called the submarine, etc. But seeing it on a very continuous basis, I don't think that would have that would have been possible. Also, there is a fundamental flaw with this idea. I feel at that time in 1915, what was the political consciousness of the people? Could they have? What kind of councils they would have? So they might have been, but what kind of a government it would have? They might have got fantastic plans, but this kind of plans were often, if you go through the Second World War, the generals used to plan various kinds of hatch used to plan to get funding from the government. It happened in the First World War, in the Second World War, generals came across various kinds of plans. So India was actually too far, and the British were too entrenched. And even if you some people and this secretive plan. So I do not know how it would have succeeded in that sense. But if there was a plan, I'm sure you can find out more about it. Michael O'Dyer's book also speak about it, and that Narendranath Bhattacharya, later M.N. Roy, was sent for that reason to Batavia to make contacts with the German, I believe, to collect the arms. Later on, he went away on a
Avani Mukherjee also said to Europe.
Avani Mukherjee. Now, what happened? Avani Mukherjee, and they say, Avani Mukherjee suffered a worse fate. He also, M.N. Roy could come at least alive back to India. But anyway, he has gone on a world tour kind of a thing, into Russia, to America, to Mexico, all other places. So he came back a changed person. So I do not know. That is, the dilemma which today I was speaking to others, that should I be at all speaking of that issue, because most of my writings have been on constitutional issues, and I do not know whether it had that taken place. How could India have become free? What kind of government would that have a viable government? You can have a plan. 1857 also there was no such detailed plan, but this is one of things. But revolutionary is what I feel that the main contribution of the revolutionaries uh, was telling that a nation is much more important than your career, than your laws, than your parliamentary provisions. A nation is a matter of life and death. You can kill somebody or you can die for the nation. That is that spirit of patriotism that the revolutionaries gave to us. Why speak of revolutionaries? Even after India became independence, it was said in the Constituent Assembly, now that we have become independent, even satyagraha has become irrelevant. And later on, it was specifically holding satyagraha against the government. They said we have now our own government. Even satyagraha should be ruled out. So revolutionary method should be ruled out all the more. So what we today have of the revolutionaries, it is the changed world today. Revolutionaries is that spirit of the independent, that freedom and that nation should be defended at all costs. And freedom is more important than our personal lives, let alone our career, our family, and other. That is the message I think that the people like Rash Behari Bose and others have given to us. Rest of the thing I am not sure, but if you want, I shall try to help you, because you already have so extensive knowledge. I shall try to find out more. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Anything.
Manavendra for
Thank you,
asking.
Dattaji.
Is
Did
there-
you happen to grow up in the 80s of over Chittaranjan Park area in Delhi in the 80s?
No, sir. I stay at a place called Munir Khan in JNU. It is 6 to 7 kilometers away. I visit Chittaranjan Park, but I never grew up there. So it's a rich people's place.
Okay. So my question was that those days, as a young boy, I used to attend those Durga Pujas there. I've attended two of them those days.
Yes.
So my point is due, sir. How Rash Behari Bose influenced the movement? There was certain thing happened in Burma, Rangoon military cantonment. Thing happened
Singapore,
in 1915 and 1916.
Singapore,
between
I know it
1914 and
happened.
1916. Yes, sir. How he influenced? Because my mother's grandfather, paternal grandfather, he was shot dead,
Yeah.
executed during the court of inquiry. And
When?
because that movement, that
Acha,
time,
okay.
Rash Behari Bose did something. So this,
Yes.
there was an uprising at that point of time.
Yes.
Do you have any idea
See,
about it?
no, Rash Behari, as I said, Rash Behari Bose had planned a pan-Indian uprising on 21st of February 1915. That was the signal date. Now, there were people inside the army because, British Indian Army was that Gadar people were also active, those who have come from America. And inside the army, because also Indians were they form. I mean, Indians anyway formed the majority even after 1857. I mean,
Yes.
you could not have formed a British majority Indian army. It was not simply possible. So I think he set up a kind of a Rash Behari Bose himself had not said anything in great detail on that, but from cantonment to Peshawar, they had targeted all the cantonment towns up to Singapore. In Singapore, there was an uprising on that day, but in India, not much had taken place. So it is said that there was an extensive conspiracy which somehow got betrayed. So 19th of February 15, this whole thing came into light, and the British into action mode, and Rash Behari Bose had to leave Lahore, which was his headquarter in those days. So I think he had built up an extensive network within the army. I am not sure because these things in Rash Behari's own biography, you see, he had written with express name with the people who are dead, but those who were still alive and could be in trouble due to his writing, Rash Behari Bose had not. As an expert revolutionary, he has never revealed everything in his own writings. Because remember, all he lived all his life in colonial India. British was still there when Rash Behari Bose fled. So that it did. And Rash Behari had gone to Burma, that he writes once. But that was in 1910. And I do not know whether that was in, I don't think in 1910 he could have been, so powerful at that time. Because the first time Rash Behari Bose actually came to limelight was in the 1912, the Hardinger bomb case. So that is what I know, sir. I shall try to find out more.
Oh, yeah, that was the thing. Then the second part was how when Aurobindo went to Pondicherry, did Rash Behari Bose also was in Pondicherry? Because
no.
Aurobindo influenced somebody in that point of time in Pondicherry. There were a few Brahmins who were influenced by Aurobindo, but the planning should be done by Rash Behari Bose because it was executed well at that point.
No. You see, Rash Behari Bose was much younger to Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo was born in 1872 and Rash Behari Bose was born in 1886. He was staying there. Sri Aurobindo Ghosh was staying at Chandornagar in 1910 for a few months or few weeks, I believe, before he went away to Pondicherry, which was a French town.
Yeah.
And Rash Behari Bose did not meet Aurobindo that time. And later on, Rash Behari Bose could meet the maker of that Prabortok Shango, Motilal Rai. And Motilal Rai told him about Sri Aurobindo. So Rash Behari never met Aurobindo directly. And yes, when he went to Pondicherry, there were some people under his influence. One of the persons is the famous poet of the Tamil language, Subramaniam Bharti. He was close to Sri Aurobindo and there in Pondicherry.
Yes.
And that VVS Iyer, I think, I'm not sure. He was there in.
Yes. That's
Savarkar.
the person, yeah. Yes.
Yes. He had started a Sanskrit school also later on. He died in an accident while saving his daughter at a place in. So that is there. But Tagore also went to meet Sri Aurobindo in 1925 there. So that's far as I know, but directly Rash Behari Bose had never met Sri Aurobindo in person.
Yeah,
as far as I know.
Okay. So, do you have any memorial in Chandanagar for Rash Behari Bose? Like any
Yes, there are
RBS?
two bursts. I had sent an image. I mean, if you can send me, I can send you the pictures also. One of the pictures I had taken, and another is in front of Chandanagar College. And
Chandanagar College.
it is inscribed on that. I am a fighter. One fight more, the last and the best. And then his signature. So
Brilliant, brilliant.
it is just near Ganga. Chandanagar College is just in front of River Hooghly, and in front of Chandanagar College there is a bust of Rash Behari Bose. Another similar kind of a bust is just near Rash Behari Bose's house, which I have visited. Just near that, which was unveiled by that revolutionary Biman Bihari Chaudhary from that Chittagong Armory revolt. He came from Bangladesh to do this. Because he was a centenarian, he lived for long. So
long. So thank you, sir. I have a few more questions, but let me give chance to others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mahendraji, for asking the question. So I have one question to ask. So since we have talked about this earlier also, Priyadarshi ji, and you even mentioned this about during your speech. So, revolutionaries could not get more popular because of the nature of freedom struggle they underwent. But again, I need to ask you this question: do you feel the efforts of freedom fighters who were not in the Congress side intentionally undermined? Do you think so? And if you feel so, who should be held responsible?
Well, that depends. It's basically I gave you two examples. One is that Jogesh Chandra Chatterjee's book Pathways to Freedom, I believe its name. It speaks about for the first time that when they tried to meet the Congress leadership, I mean the ministers in Lucknow and in Delhi just after the revolution, just after independence, and they found their minimum demands. And in Delhi there was a conference held after independence in which brother of Sri Aurobindo, who himself was in Andaman and Nicobar jail, Barindra Kumar Ghosh, who was the pioneer of revolution, you can say, in Bengal. He was also present there, I think, in 1956. He was the editor of Boshumoti Daily in Bengali. Brother of Vivekananda, he was a bit communist minded. I think one was Mohendralal Datto, another is Bhupendranath Datto, I believe his name was there. They were also present, and they, I think, met Nehru also. And all they had demanded that this place, this jail which was there in Central Jail in Delhi, which has now been converted into Maulana Azad Medical College, they said that should have been preserved. At least that place where their gallows was there, where they used to be hanged, that should have been at least been preserved. But they have that have not been preserved as far as I know. I've not gone, but that has not been. Another is there, Delhi government had named some schools on Awadh Bihari, Balmukund. I think those names are no longer there on that boards as I have seen. Now, your question is that yes, were they intentionally, where they were what you called neglected and they were intentionally marginalized? Yes, because you see, after all, after 1935, when this Government of India Act came, so politics became a game of power. You give them the powers to something and they would settle down in their positions. And the Congress, after all, got independence. They became the people who were actually fighting with their white caps. They were struggling against the British, suddenly became the masters of India. And naturally, they would not like to entertain the others, other parties who have given their lives. And they have no access to the levers of power. Although individually, I would say that some Congress leaders, where one of them was, I think, called Benarasi Das Gupta, in all his life, he had two missions. One is to promote Hindi, and another was to give honor to the revolutionaries. And today we have this, although there are very few people left, I think, believe this freedom fighters pension. You know why this freedom fighters pension was started? There was a news came out in the newspaper that Chandrasekhar Azad's mother, who was still alive at that age, had no sources of income, and she used to do cleaning work in other people's houses, doing household chores work to make her living. When that news came in the newspaper, Banarsi Das ji, he took initiative to start this freedom fighters pension. At least should be given to those the freedom fighters are dead. Their families would also have some means of survival. So this is what I feel, and they did not want to give air to this idea of revolution. I think once that they came to the power, they replaced the British in power, and in an independent India also they wanted to tone down this idea of revolution. And because this revolution has taken a new meaning at that time. At that time, Communist Party has infiltrated, and revolution had kind of become a communist revolution, as you saw in some parts of India. So they did not want to highlight it. So I think that was the reason, maybe according to me, I feel that they were not. But of course, later on, Publication Division of India has published books on the speeches and the lives of the various. So individually, there were people within the government, those who were sympathetic to the revolutionaries, maybe. But as an establishment, revolutionaries were left high and dry. Those who were still living at that age. And the most sorry death was that Batukeshwar Datta. When Batukeshwar Datta died in a very pitiable condition in Delhi's Ames, only Bhagat Singh's mother was there. Jayadhari Devi, or when Bhagat Singh's mother was only near him, and he died in a pitiable circumstances. So yes, it is true. There is some substance what you are saying.
Okay, thank you for answering the question. And now we have one question from Sunil Kumar. Sunil Kumar ji wants to ask you, ki, how would he have felt about partition and subsequent fate of the Indian Republic? So
Rash Behari Bose, you mean? Rash Behari Bose? You see,
would...
see, whatever we might say, you see, today is 23rd of June, 23rd of June 1947, a voting took place in the undivided Legislative Council of Punjab on whether Punjab should be divided or kept united. 3 days ago, on 20th of June, now marked as West Bengal Day, only by BJP, not by PMC government there, on the partition of Bengal. You see, initially this nationalist thought, and it is still today, that there should not have been a partition of India. Maybe Rash Behari Bose, because Lahore was his place, and no revolutionary or no freedom fighter would have preferred partition. But then there were certain very gaping realities that, that Muslim League fought the 1946 election on the basis of Pakistan, and it got over 90% of seats. And it said if they can't have India divided, they will have India destroyed. So Hindus and the Sikhs, who had initially opposed the partition of India, came to support the partition of Punjab and Bengal to save at least some part of those provinces for India, if we cannot save the entire India. Rash Behari Bose might have felt, even Subhash Chandra Bose also said that my divine motherland should not be cut up. But then the realities were there. I mean, if you today we say, many people say Congress allowed the partition. Hey, you come to see the hard realities of that time, that the results of 1946 elections. And if India had not been partitioned, Muslim League would have made such demands which would have made the lives of the Hindus at least very intolerable. For example, had a Muslim lead asked that Hindus are in a majority in the entire India. We don't want partition, but you have to give a permanent majority to the Muslims in the armed forces. Would you have accepted that? They would have asked, give us permanent quota where Hindu Muslims are in a majority. They should be given weightage to the extent of 50%, which they had actually demanded at one point of time. Would you have given that? So there are many, personal, what they feel personally is not important. What was the situation of India at that time is actually more important. So that is what I feel.
Was that instigated by, apologies, so was that instigated by British because they were losing the war between from 1944, because 45 only it ended? And was they instigated by British to push the Muslims major demands?
See, this is again a conspiracy theory. As far as I know, that if you go through the records of the cabinet mission which visited India in the 1946, cabinet mission never said that there should be partition, and cabinet mission ruled out the partition, even Bengal and Punjab, saying that it is impractical. And they say it got for a grouping scheme, although I believe that Muslims would have gained more from that grouping. It is only the partition, again, this idea of partition was reignited for a time. Jinnah had agreed to work with the Congress. When in August, sometimes after the cabinet mission has gone away from India, Jawaharlal Nehru, while addressing a press conference, he said, while we are entering into a new constituent assembly, which would be constituted, we go completely unfettered. We are a sovereign assembly. We don't stand by any promises or any undertaking which were given to British. We are a sovereign power. Then Jinnah said, although Muslim League had won positions in the Constituent Assembly, Muslim League never joined the Constituent Assembly. Later on, some joined in personal capacity, those who remained in India. Then Jinnah was in London, and at that time he was saying that the Constituent Assembly was dominated completely by Hindus. We have nothing to do with them. And so this thing was reignited. And by 47 early, you see all this, the 46, the riots started in Calcutta in August itself. Jinnah gave this call for direct day or the deliverance day. After a few days, I think what Jawaharlal Nehru said, there was a direct action day. After that, in the October, you had the riots in Noakhali. Since 1947, the killings in Punjab and the Multan riots began. So they would make the. So I don't think it is a British plan. At least you cannot prove it on the basis of available documents. When somebody said some conspiracy theory, it is another thing. That the available documents are cabinet mission committee's report and transfer of power documents. There is nothing, at least there. British wanted to keep India as it is, at least united. Their more problem was with the princely state, that they should join one. So when finally it appeared there was a party, there will be partition. The British Prime Minister at that time, Attlee, stated that if no reconciliation could be reached in February 3rd, I think he gave a speech, I'm not sure, that India would, if the Muslim League don't want, they could have a different constituent assembly. The partition, the independence of India would not be held up for long. He also sent a message to the Muslim, it could be a partition, other thing, but you can't hold up the independence of India as such. And on 3rd of June, 1947, this Mountbatten made a speech in which he made that Bengal and Punjab would be partitioned. Finally, we would resolve the case, and British wished to be out. And British wanted to be out. The latest by the date was given under the Indian Independence Act was June 1948, before which British wished to be out. That is the latest date. So British left much earlier in 47.
Part to that, it's been a little ringing on my mind for a long time. So when during the partition, maybe a little off for today's subject. During the partition, both the three services, we had Army, Navy, Air Force, and the other side also, but all were manned by the Britishers. And there was one guy, Mountbatten, who was the general for both the thing, viceroy for both the countries at that point of time. Why they could not control the killings and that thing? I know it's a very big subject. Just a few lines on that, if you can. Whatever to your.
In Lochin Lake, no, British, the chiefs were British for a certain time, that the chiefs continued to be British in, and the Navy chiefs were, of course, the British. I see what actually happened. The partition of India was not properly planned, as it was planned in case of, say, Turkey and Greece in 1923 under Lausanne Treaty. It was not properly planned. No one had foreseen. Once Jinnah had been saying, okay, once you give the partition, the things would get solved. But then there would be on both sides, there would be minorities left. And the Pakistan did not want them. They want to shut off them. So nobody properly foresaw it. And you see, the greater portion of the Indian army was comprised of Indians And what was there in Indian at that time? Do you know that Muslims in the peacetime army, the Muslims had a majority. In one of the great books, Dr. Ambedkar, Pakistan or Partition of India, he speaks about it. It is only after the World War started and Veer Savarkar started this idea of recruitment of the Hindus, that Hindus could have a majority in that wartime army. So when the war ended, Hindus had a majority in army. But when the war had begun in 39, that was not the case. The head count was in the favor of the Muslims. Most of the Muslims were from the from Western
Northwest,
Punjab and Northwest
Northwest
frontier
Frontier Front.
provinces and the Pathans, etc. All those there. So British, I think, never foresaw that when this army also itself will get polarized on the Hindu-Muslim line, partitioned on Hindu-Muslim line, and so this was a kind of a mismatch, and at the many of the times it has been found out. I mean, there is a good book written by K.L. Goba, who was initially a Hindu, who became a Kishan Lal Goba, then he became Karim Latif Goba, but later on when the partition took place, he came back to India and he completely exposed Pakistan in a book called Inside Pakistan, in which he speaks about the role of the civil servants also, where the civil servant district officers acted in a tough manner, killings were saved, but on where they did not, there were more killings, and this entire Punjab region, there was a forced exchange of population, which did not happen in Bengal. But then, of course, it has its own dynamics. Yes.
Yes. So thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you,
We
Priyadarshi.
got a
So
long
I think,
subjects to talk.
yeah, yes, of course. The huge
Thanks.
subject. Yeah. Thank you.
But since
So
we
I
are
think,
running out of time, so let me ask the last question and then we can just end.
okay.
Okay. Priyadarshi ji, last year on 21st of October 2023 marked the 80th anniversary of the formation of the first Indian government. So on 21st of October 1943, one of the India's greatest sons, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, announced the formation of Arzi Hukumate Azad Hind, or the Provincial Government of Free India in Singapore, and declared war on the British Empire. So
Correct.
I need to ask you that which date is more relevant to be celebrated as the Indian Independence Day? So which date should be credited with the Independence Day? 15th August or 21st of October?
No, I don't think you see there should not be a kind of a see 21st August, which was true, but you see 21st of October, which you are saying that declared that independence. Indian independence movement is a very peculiar thing. If you see all the freedom movements, if you compare with the freedom movement of America in 18th century, Greece in 19th century, and Bangladesh in 20th century, in all the places, freedom movement once started, ended with the achievement of freedom. I mean, the sword that was once unsheathed was re-scabbarded after the war had ended. But in the case of India, the freedom movement was a long drawn process. We actually cannot say when it began. Of course, it ended on 15th of August, but when we became a dominion state on that day. So Indian freedom movement was of very different nature. In America, they draw it from the day independence was declared, namely 4th of July. That is not actually the date in which the British left the American shores. It is not like that. So 21st is India declared that it is independent, but it was of course a government in exile, which was recognized by 9 governments of at that time, mostly which were closer to the Axis power, like the Japan, Germany, Italy, Croatia, nationalistic Japan, Nanking government, and all others. So I don't think we should put up this kind of a rivalry between the dates and confuse the opinion. Both have their own place in the history. After 21st of October, we did not become completely independent. 15th of August is when the independence came. And 15th of August was also the day which India was partitioned. 15th of August was the birthday of Sri Aurobindo, who was the first person in India to declare, at least on that, and India should be so free, like Indian should be so free in India as an French in France and the American in America. He was the first prophet of independence in that sense, we can say. So I think there should not be a kind of this rivalry, and I've been, howsoever we try, we cannot actually remove this 15th August from our mind. That would remain, 15th August would remain there. 21st August is also a important date. Of course, we would celebrate it, but I think the two should not be confused.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Priyadarshi. Since we are running out of time, we need to wrap up the
Yes.
session. So before
Yes.
wrapping up the session, I need to just clear the objectives. We need to give due recognition to Krantikaris and INA veterans. Also, we need to correct and rewrite history of freedom struggle so that they can get
Yes.
some recognition that they have not got. So they have not get the recognition, and also we can celebrate. We should celebrate 21st October as Azad Hind Divas, and
Yes.
campaign for it to get the government recognition. Also, I will request the participants to come forward and write columns or research papers, books, etc., so that this can push our cause. So thank you to the audience for patient listening, and a special thanks to Priyadarshi for coming and enlightening us. Thank you so much, Priyadarshi ji. And again, we will come up with an enlightened speaker who will enlighten us by his knowledge. Thanks a lot, Priyadarshi ji. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Jai Hind.